everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira. I am your host, and we are officially in season 5 of Motivational Monday. That might not mean a lot for some of you who might be new here, but for some of you, that means that we've been here for a whole stinking year. And it's probably been one of the best years of my life. Am I going to say that it's because of you all? Abso-freaking-lutely. The fact that I get to show up and do events and take all of this information that's in my head and give it to you and help you all live not bitter lives. Let's never help you live bitter lives. We're going to help you live better lives. But if you're living a bitter life, it'll get better. I promise. So today is our first day of quarter 4 of the year. There's a lot happening. And actually, drop 111 in the chat if you're brand new here. Drop 222 in the chat if you are a ride or die with us. Today starts a new quarter. We are doing financial well-being for this quarter. And we did this last year, financial well-being, and we had ridiculous results. We had one person pay off we had one person who went through the program, started using a guide, and ended up having a plan to pay off their mortgage 20 years early, which meant that they were saving more than $100,000 in interest. And he was like, I got money, I'm good. But the fact that I get to pass that down to my kids and have this generational wealth and this legacy, amazing. So we're going to do a lot of work. This month is money mindset. So we're going to be talking about foundationally, you know how I work. We want to get into the nitty gritty of what's going on in here before we try to get you doing work out in the real world. So we're going to do money mindset in October, money management in November, really teaching you how do you maintain all of this? And then money momentum in December. I toyed with money mastery or money momentum, but you guys aren't going to have money mastery in 3 months, but you will have a really positive momentum that is going to fuel you forwards, especially with a guide by your side. So I am putting a survey up on the screen for you all. You know how much I love getting the results from every month that we do our programming so that I can see if it's actually working. And then these are all numbers and statistics that we get to send to your employers as well. So we get to say, hey, not any of your names or any of your things, but we get to say, hey, we've been doing this programming and 90% of people in the month of July saw an increase in self-love. And that's a real statistic. 95% of people in the month of August saw an increase in the positivity and the effectiveness of their interpersonal relationships. And now this poll is helping us get a feel on how well we did in our workplace relating. So thank you so much for filling that out. We have today's session that kicks off the entire financial well-being series. Motivational Monday, the way that our events and everything works, Motivational Monday is a quick, fun, light and easy one hitter where it's just 30 minutes on a Monday morning. You get to set your week off right. You get to have new information jiving around in your brain, give you something new to think about, a new way to look at your life, something to get jazzed about, some good freaking energy. And then after that, we have our monthly events. So we've got the deep dive, which is every second Wednesday of the month, where we take the main topic of the month and we do a deep dive. So this Wednesday, 2 days from now, we are doing our money mindset deep dive. We've got Alvaro here. He's going to get a short bio in a minute, and then we're going to get started. But him and I are going to come together really to dive into money mindset and the deep layers of all of that. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat. I highly suggest registering for it. If you register for it, you'll also get access to the recordings as well, which is always helpful for you. And then we also have our deep dive mentorship the third Wednesday of every month, where me and Alvaro will be in an open Zoom meeting room, and you get to bring your money mindset questions to the table and be like, hey, I think about money in this way, and I know it's maybe not the best. What do I do? So you get live, real mentoring with me and Alvaro. And it doesn't have to be intimidating. It just gets to be, hey, we're talking about money mindset. Let's all have a real conversation. Your face and your voice will be able to be heard on that mentorship session. So both of those links are in the chat for you. You will be seeing new branding for flyers coming probably in the next couple of weeks. You'll also see that there's going to be new ways that we're doing our programming for 2026. I almost have 2026 started to be fully planned out, which is very exciting. The journey that we get to take together is so good, and the fact that we get to do this together is amazing. So stay tuned for everything that's coming and everything that's changing, but we have a real life, really amazing conversation that is meant to be had right here. So with all of that being said, I'm going to give you maybe 30 more seconds to fill out this survey. And from there, we're going to go ahead and get started into the conversation. So we have the very wonderful, the very amazing, you have yet to experience Alvaro here. And if you would like to take yourself, show us your beautiful face, Alvaro. He is one of our life guides. He is also a really amazing neuroplastician. And when I came to him with this topic, he was like, Kira, let's dive in. This is so important. So Alvaro, before we dive into today's money mindset conversation, obviously you're a neuroplastician, you're a life guide, you've done a lot in your lifetime, you've experienced and explored a lot. Can you tell us why this conversation around money mindset and the mindset around money is so important before we even get into the physical aspects of money? Why do we have to start here?
Thanks, Kira. And I'm really excited to talk about this, because it's one of the taboo topics in society. And so, why is money mindset such an important thing? I think if you don't have clarity around your mindset, particularly in money, in any aspects of your life, then you don't have intent. And if you don't have intent, it's really hard to have desired impacts achieved. And so setting the mindset is super important. It's that foundation from which you build. Regardless of the tools you use, the mindset is really what drives the direction. So you need to have that in order to be able to measure your progress.
Exactly. And it makes me think, and this is why it's so important too. I work with a guide specifically for finances. I when I first started working with my guide back in July of 2024, I was $30,000 in debt. 20 of that was car. So it's different. When you look at credit card debt and just spending for no reason versus card, those there are different debts, and those are important conversations too that you can get more nitty-gritty with your guide into. We're doing a lot of like upper level conversations, but there's such a thing as lifestyle creep as well. So when you start to look at, there's a real statistic, and this surprises me, and drop 333 in the chat for those of you who are listening if this surprises you, but 50% of people making over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, is that a problem of inflation? Sure. Is that a problem of the society that we live in? Sure. But what is it most likely the problem of? Something that we call lifestyle creep, which is a mindset thing. The more money you make, the more money you spend. So you're not wealthier, you're just spending more money. So when we start getting into these conversations, Alvaro, about money mindset and what it looks like to start to change that, we have the ability now to start to ask the conversations of what was my first experience around money? What was my first memory around money? How did it shape the way I felt about spending or saving today? So I don't necessarily want to hear about your first experience with money, but I would love for you to give us some insight into why starting to ponder and think about our first experience with money might be playing a role. I'm 30 years old now, so maybe 30 years later for some of us.
Yeah, so I'm almost double your age there, so I've been around the track a couple of more times, and it is good to go back and think about what was it for me, what are my first memories of money, because at the end of the day, how we experience the world and how we live in the world, how we make sense of it, the reality we construct is based on emotions, and those emotions are the things that build the neural pathways that create the cause and effect of how we live in the world. Whether we choose to jaywalk or wait for the light, all those things are built of emotional construct. And so when you think about this, for me, for example, I was the youngest in my family. I was the second youngest. My younger brother passed away when I was very young. So I became the baby again. And I lived on a hand-me-down basis. I got my brother's clothing, I got my brother's toys, and so the way that I built my emotional construct, even though I grew up in the same household as my brothers, is different. But put two and two together, how I connected dots around things that before I even knew what money was, those building blocks start, and those roadways, those pathways, those neural networks start building. And so it's really important. And then when I became, when I was 10 years old, grade 5, I got my first paper route. I was shoveling driveways, snow off driveways in the wintertime, mowing lawns in the summer. I was making money. And I was the guy that had money. Everybody else had like $5 a month allowance. I had literally, when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, hundreds of dollars a month.
Wow.
Which even by today's date is quite a bit of cash, but I'm talking back in the 70s. And And that built an emotional construct for me because it built how I built relationships. It built how I had developed my spending habits because of the emotions that I felt. And so it is really important to go kind of back and kind of discover what built my perceptions and my relationship to money.
I think that's such a perfect tangent as well to start talking about what are what are the ways that we speak about money, right? Because you're talking about how like it's affected your relationships. And me, almost a year and a half ago, $30,000 in debt, I was so unconfident in myself. I didn't trust myself in relationships. I didn't know personally as a Kira that I could trust myself because money is so foundational. There's so much shame associated with it. And I think I want to get into the shame of money next, Alvaro, because I think that's the one thing that's really keeping us so constricted and so stuck in. We know that we have money problems. I knew that I had a money problem for, I had that debt for quite a few years. I knew I had it for years, but I was so ashamed of it that I didn't do anything about it. And that shame did leak into my relationships because I didn't feel, I did. I had this kind of like fraud complex of I'm running a business, I'm doing all of these things, I'm networking, but my financial foundations suck. And a lot of us can relate to that. So many of us haven't been given the tools or resources to navigate money, finances, debt, positive debt, negative debt, all the things. So you can drop, if you're feeling vulnerable, you can drop 444 in the chat if you have debt that you're ready to start moving forward with and to start changing your mindset on. You can put an affirmation in the chat. Just be like, I love being financially responsible. I'll do it too because I love it. But I used to hate it. And it really ruled my life. So now I'm $30,000 not in debt anymore. I have no debt. I'm moving into beautiful apartments next week. I'm so confident. I'm about to go to the presidents of like certain associations in the town that I'm moving into and having conversations with them and networking, but that's because I have the confidence now to know that the conversations I can have with these people are real because I know that I have trust in myself that I'm the type of woman who is financially responsible. I can network, I can generate income, I can invest it, and other people can trust me in that. And that's huge. So when we start looking at shame, Alvaro, and how it plays a role in how we look at money, I feel like most of us relate to that feeling of shame with money and not talking about it. What does that do in our minds? And why do we struggle with it so much? And then how do we start to move into taking action? Because I think what I see is that we are financially paralyzed as a society and we need to start taking action. And a side note for those of you who are here, we do have a Q&A. There's a box on the bottom of your screen. You can put a question in there and we'll answer your exact question. So yeah, drive us into shame and how that rules our relationship around money a little bit more.
Well, first, I want to take a second and appreciate your vulnerability in sharing your path, um, because what you'll find probably, if if you're as human as the rest of us, is that it isn't a one and done. You kind of you get off, you fall off the cart, you get on the cart, you fall off the cart. There's curveballs in life, accidents happen, kids come along, all sorts of things happen, and all those savings that we have sometimes disappear very quickly. I think a sneak peek of what's going to happen between now and December. We learn through stories, and that is the most powerful way to get it home. So, what stories can I tell you to talk about the shame? I had a
Wait,
time.
can I
Yeah,
pause you for 1 second because I my brain needs to hear this. Are you telling me on a neuroscience basis, I'm asking this very specifically on neuroscience basis, that the brain retains information better through story than through numbers and tactical things?
yeah. Well, ultimately the best thing to do is, if you have an absolutely killer accountant, they tell you stories through your numbers. They tell you who you are. Like an accountant who's absolutely phenomenal can read your bank statements. If you give them all of your bank statements, all of your receipts, every debit and credit, they can tell you who you are. They can tell you your sexual orientation. They can tell you
Wow.
your religious beliefs. They can tell you all sorts of things. It's all in your numbers. It's data, and those numbers do they're a byproduct of how we live our lives. So stories are the way that we actually work as a species.
Hmm.
That's why they're handed down from generation to generation, and nothing changes. Everything we do is around building stories so we can share those stories and be a stronger species. So this
Mm.
capacity to meet on Zoom is for storytelling. The internet, email, everything that we do, AI is taking off because we can finally speak to each other without having to learn a new language of coding. We can actually do it with just the regular old English, Spanish, French, Algerian, whatever it is that you speak, right? So stories are essential. And so here's my stories to add to your story of this shift that you've had over this last year and a half. The reality is this. One of my children was extremely distressed and having a hard time because felt they were irresponsible in their financial management. And I sat down and I went through the numbers with that child, and it is, a child in their 20s living independently. And what I came down to was you don't make enough money to be irresponsible with money. You just
Exactly.
don't make
Thank
enough.
you.
So you're in debt, and how much debt? Oh, it's horrible. I've got like $2,000 of credit card debt. That individual, having, my child, was experiencing exactly the same neurochemical reaction of stress as somebody who's got $250,000, $2.5 million, $2.5 billion of stress. It's exactly the same. The body doesn't know the difference. And
Hmm.
it's so important to recognize that neurologically we will respond, and the stress response will be exactly the same. It will have the same medical impact and the same impact on how you show up in the world. So you say, that you're a more confident person now. You can go network and all that. Your energy expresses that. Well, if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't have a handle on my life, I'm a loser, I can't do this, oh my gosh, I can't make ends meet, I don't know if I can buy that coffee or not. That comes out when you go networking as well. You don't need to say it. It's just
It
obvious.
does.
As soon as you walk in the room, the energy is there, right? So it's really important. And you think, okay, well, that's one child. Well, the other child had a severe concussion and was not able to study or work for a long time. And that child actually didn't feel comfortable even going out on a date. Didn't feel that there was something to offer because they were defining themselves partially, a large part, because of their capacity to be financially viable in our society. So
Hmm.
it's huge. And that's why stories are so important, because I think that's where we connect and say, oh my gosh, I have a child like that, or I am a child like that. I can relate to that.
It's so true. And it makes me think of the stories that we were told and those first memories that we have with money versus where we are now, right? Like I know that I used to have a story of shame, and it wasn't necessarily inherently built by my immigrant grandparents, but my grandfather was like work hard and save your money. And that's what I did. I worked really hard, and really hard, and really I started working at 14. I was going to high school and work full time. And by the time I was 24, I realized, wow, I really worked hard and I saved all of my money, but I'm so unsatisfied. And I had to undo all of that and change the stories of money where when I was looking for a job with Life Guides after shutting down my business, I was really clear. I was like, I want freedom. I want time freedom. I want the finances that I know that I'm worth because I know the work that I can bring to the table for Life Guides. And that level of confidence I had to develop myself outside of my grandparent because if my grandfather ever heard me say that and be like, I'm queen of the world, I make my own reality, I'm going to get the exact job that I want and then get it, he would turn over in his grave. There's no way. He'd be like, Kira, you need to work really hard. What's in your save? All the things. So I've changed it too. And it's changed in how I am. But I think that the greatest way that we can make generational impact is two ways. And we already have done a lot of the other way. One, in your relationships. We are a social species. We need people to thrive. Alvaro will tell you that over and over. Your brain needs people. We also live in the world we live in. You also will need money. So if you focus on your relationships and your finances, those two things will help you skyrocket your life in such a good, easy way. And it doesn't have to be the thing. And I think, Alvaro, I want you to talk about this. What happens in the brain when we get new information, like we are now? And we're like, oh my gosh, I want to change my finances. But we have this part of our brain that's like, I need to do everything right now. How do we chill that out? Or that part says that, and then we get overwhelmed and we do nothing. So, how do we chill that part out? How do we work with the brain and set that foundation for our mindset where we know that we're putting in work? We're changing a mindset. We don't need to do everything right now, but this mindset work we're doing is so foundational. So, how do we get that starting to be imprinted in our minds as we're setting up for this next really robust quarter together?
Yeah, so in the deep dive, what we're going to be looking at is how much time we need to spend in discovery. Because solution-based thinking, that's where we all naturally go. Oh, I've got a fix for that. I know how to. Oh, have you tried this? I think the challenging part really is around understanding and educating yourself on how things actually function. So, from a neuroscientific standpoint, what you're talking about is that excitement. Your brain is getting new information, novel information. Well, the amygdala loves novel. It's like, oh my gosh, it's new, and it's quite binary. I either want it, I don't know it, and I want it, or I don't know it, it's threatening, I'm gonna run,
Mm.
or freeze or appease. So that component, how do you temper that? How do you temper? Oh my gosh, yeah, no, I want the yacht. Um, well, first of all, you do the discovery and you find out, well, I don't even like to be away from home. So do I want the yacht? There's that component. I think what's important to understand is that what happened in that particular moment of, oh, I want to have that control, I want to have that sense of peace, that's a yearning. That's a dopaminergic reaction. You want something, you crave something, you yearn something. That's dopamine at work. And that dopamine was released because the neural network said there's something novel that I want, or there's something I know that I've experienced that I want. And
Mm.
to answer your question, what we do is we baby step it so that we yearn for the baby step, not for the leap. Because when you yearn for the baby step, then you can take action and do it and get the dopaminergic release, which then actually creates a little synapse, nice and thin, which when done over and over and over becomes thicker and thicker in a highway, and now you have something that you've transformed yourself.
Mm.
Why do I say discovery? The reality is, Kira, yourself, myself, everybody on this call, it started 2 generations before we were even born. The genetic imprinting, if you want to leave a legacy, shift who you are because it actually will impact your DNA and pass on to the next generation. So that's a legacy. That is a story that's written in your genes. And that genetic imprinting we carry. So there was a phenomenal study done in Poland at the turn of the Second World War and V-Day when things were over. And women in their last trimester at coming to the end of the war, their children had a higher propensity for obesity because those women were walking the aisles of their Safeways and their, grocery stores, and they were empty. And the message to the fetus was scarcity. If you
Wow.
get your hands on it, you take it. The women who had their last trimester after the war ended and those shelves were filled and everybody was having a party, those children didn't have that propensity for obesity. That's how impactful it is. So you can make choices today which will impact your genetic makeup, your DNA, and that will pass on. Or you can choose to carry the ones that you were born with and live the story that was created by generations before you. It's that amazing.
This conversation makes me so emotional because talking about the reason why I love neuroscience is because I started getting into it through epigenetics and the realization that we have the ability to change our lives. So, we're coming to an end on the session. If you want more, join the deep dive on Wednesday. That's where you're going to get everything. We're going to dive deep and really get into a lot of this and start shifting your mindset. Um, but it makes me emotional because we think that we're born and we just are how we are. But the truth is, I've heard different things from different people, but let's say 85%, let's say 40 to 85% of your genes maybe are malleable. And when you start looking at epigenetics, it's the study of how your environment and the way you make your moves every single day in your life change who you are. It's why I grew up in a household that was super Christian, but now I host yoga retreats and do breath work, and I'm an indigenous medicine woman. What? Two different worlds apart, but I was able to change that. So if you look at your parents, if you look at your grandparents, if you look at your great grandparents, and you see the way that this is the discovery too, start asking the questions or start looking. How did they live their lives? How did they handle their money? Those are the things that are automatically imprinted in you. And you can either choose to stay that way or you can choose to change. And the only human constant is change. If you choose to stay the same, that same inner angst that you have right now around money, around your life, about what you want to do with your life that you feel like you can't do because maybe you're taking advice from the people who are living the life that you never want to live. Maybe it's time to make some changes. So we have one person in the chat who did ask a question. What do you recommend to get over financial stress? Is there a method or system? We're bringing it to the table for all of Q4. I would highly suggest just joining our sessions. But even beyond that, gathering information is never going to be enough. You need to be able to do it. And Alvaro, we have maybe 3 more minutes. I think I want you to keep this relatively short just because I have a couple of announcements at the end. But can you tell us the science of what it looks like to have accountability when we're taking actions and hard steps and making change? Because I know it's not easy in the brain, and again, we want to just do all the things, but um yeah, can you give us a little bit of that, what it looks like to have that accountability when we have that support and what that does for us?
So one of the things that I have in my toolkit is I'm a conversational intelligence
Hmm.
certified coach, and words have meanings. Stories are made of words, and those words have meanings, and those meanings have impact. And so when you say accountability, uh, you take the word accountability, the ability to account, switch them around, the ability to account. Well, for ability, then you have to look at the subset. What is ability? And so in the case of my first child that I spoke of, that child did not make enough money. They didn't have an ability to account for their financial wherewithal. They didn't have enough toys to play with in order to be able to, to make a Lego set, to make a whole city. They were missing wheels, they were missing all sorts of things. So the ability to account is really, really important, and exploring that. And as for the Q&A that's in there, what is the first step? I am a huge, huge believer. Spend 80% of your time in discovering what you were saying, Kira. If you can talk to your parents, talk to your uncles, talk to your aunts, talk to your grandparents, talk to the priest, to talk to whoever's been in your life, to give you stories around their journey with finances, their belief systems around it, their emotions around it, it'll reflect back to you. All this prism will reflect back to you to define for you how you're holding this whole concept of financial management. And so just, for that individual, just spend your time in discovery mode. Ask a lot of questions. Kira, you're from another generation. Myself, our parents were from the silent generation. They didn't just not talk about sex. They also did not talk about money. They did not talk about religion. If you were Jewish, you were careful. If you were like all these things, it just became taboo. And so they were silent. They were literally silent. They did not pass stories on to their children. And because we don't have those stories, there's gaps. So the best thing this person could do, ask for those stories.
So beautiful. I love that. That's great advice. So between now and the deep dive on Wednesday, start doing your discovery, start getting clear, start asking the questions, write some things in a journal, your notes app, whatever. Get clear on where you came from and what your money story is, because that is the foundation for everything that you're working with right now. And it's the foundation for everywhere that we're going to go. So we had one final question in the chat. We don't have time to answer it. We're officially at the end, but we will save that for Wednesday's deep dive session. So join us. The link is in the chat for you. I also dropped Alvaro's direct life guides profile. So we have our events that we do, but really my events are so that I can show you our amazing guides so you can have individual calls with them and be on a journey where you're getting all of this financial information And then you're on a call with your guide and you're putting it into action. You are in your space of starting to be like, okay, I can do this. I can put in the work. I have the accountability. There are going to be some weeks that absolutely suck. There are going to be other weeks that are super easy. The accountability and having a guide hold you every week is so important, especially if you're a procrastinator. Schedule a call every week. Maybe you won't do it one week, but eventually you'll end up doing the work that you're supposed to do. So, with all of that being said, it has been, as always, a pleasure and a joy. We love having you here. There is a survey that pops up at the end. Please fill it out. I would love to hear what you think of these. And outside of that, we hope you have a beautiful week. We will see you on Wednesday and then Motivational Monday next week. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.